He smiled as if he loved her, but when Maya Brooks plunged into the icy ocean that night, she realized that smile had been a lie. Betrayed by the man she trusted most, left for dead, she survived, and now the man who tried to kill her is about to face the revenge of a lifetime. Some falls don't kill you, they make you unstoppable. Welcome to Mr. Roberts Stories. If you love gripping tales of love, betrayal, revenge, and shocking twists, you've just found your new home. Here, every story will pull you in, make your heart race, and leave you guessing until the very last word. Now, here's the deal. Watch till the end because the best surprises are always saved for last. And if you enjoy the story, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment to share your thoughts, and subscribe so you never miss another unforgettable story. Every story on Mr. Roberts Stories isn't just something you watch, it's something you feel, something that stays with you long after the video ends. So, sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story. Trust me, you're going to want to watch every second. This is Mr. Roberts Stories, where every story is an experience. Maya Brooks had always been the kind of woman who gave more than she received. At 32, she had spent the last decade pouring her energy into caring for strangers at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. Her patients adored her, colleagues called her dependable. Yet when she came home to her husband, Daniel Hale, the man she had married 5 years earlier, she often felt invisible. Still, she loved him. Or at least, she loved the memory of who he had been when they first met. A charismatic insurance executive who swept her off her feet with flowers, expensive dinners, and long, thoughtful conversations about the future. Back then, Daniel had made her feel chosen, like she was the center of his world. But lately he had grown distant. His smile no longer reached his eyes. He kept his phone face down at dinner, disappearing into late-night meetings, brushing off her questions with quick excuses. Maya noticed the changes but chose silence. She told herself it was stress, the pressure of his job. She told herself all marriages had rough patches. Yet deep inside, insecurity gnawed at her. So when Daniel surprised her with news of a private yacht trip for their 5th wedding anniversary, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he was trying. Maybe he remembered who they used to be. The evening began like a dream. The yacht was sleek and white, rocking gently on the dark water as they sailed away from the harbor. The sky above glittered with stars, and a soft breeze carried the salty scent of the ocean. A private chef served champagne and oysters while candlelight flickered on the polished deck. For a moment, Maya let herself believe this was real. She wore a flowing emerald dress, her skin glowing under the soft light, her natural curls pinned up with delicate gold clips. Daniel looked handsome in his tailored suit, his arm around her waist, his lips brushing her cheek as he toasted to 5 beautiful years. But there was something in his eyes she couldn't quite name. Not warmth, not love, something colder. As the yacht drifted farther from shore, Maya leaned over the railing, gazing at the moon's reflection rippling on the waves. The night was so beautiful it felt unreal, like a painting. She let out a small sigh, wishing this could be the start of something new for them. Then she felt it. A sudden pressure at her back. Hands. Daniel's hands. For a split second, confusion clouded her mind. Was he teasing her? Hugging her from behind? But the pressure grew harder, forcing her forward. Her palms gripped the railing, except it wasn't secure. The latch that should have locked the safety gate had been loosened. She looked back just in time to see his face. No smile. No playfulness. Just a calm, cold determination. Daniel, she started, her voice trembling. He shoved harder. Her fingers slipped. The gate swung open. And then she was falling. The world spun, sky, sea, before the black waves swallowed her whole. The shock of the water hit like a wall of ice. Salt burned her throat as she gasped, swallowing seawater. Panic clawed at her chest as she thrashed, kicking upward until she broke the surface with a desperate cry. The yacht was already moving farther away, its lights shrinking in the distance. And on the deck, framed against the glow of the candles, stood Daniel. He didn't shout for help. He didn't throw a rope. He simply stood there watching. Then he turned his back. Murderer! Maya tried to scream, but her voice cracked into a choking cough. Waves slapped her face, pulling her under again. She fought to stay afloat, arms burning, lungs screaming for air. The cold dragged at her body, making every movement heavier, slower. She thought of her grandmother's voice, always telling her, "Baby, you're stronger than you think. Don't you ever give up." She couldn't die like this. Not at his hands. A swell lifted her, tossing her toward a cluster of jagged rocks jutting out of the water. Desperation fueled her strokes as she clawed her way closer. Her legs scraped against stone, sharp edges tearing her skin, but the pain meant she was still alive. With one last surge of strength, she pulled herself onto the rocks, collapsing face first, coughing out seawater until her throat burned raw. She lay there, shivering, the sound of the waves crashing around her. The stars above blurred through her tears. Every muscle ached. Blood trickled down her arm where the rocks had sliced her skin. She curled onto her side, trembling, gasping for breath. Her mind reeled. Daniel had pushed her. Daniel, the man she had trusted, the man she had vowed to love until death. He had looked her in the eyes and shoved her into the sea as though she were nothing. Fragments of the past months clicked into place. The late nights, the unexplained charges, the new life insurance policy he had insisted she sign. The perfume she had smelled on his shirt that wasn't hers. It had all been leading to this moment. A chilling realization sank into her bones. He had planned it. Her chest tightened, not just with pain but with rage. She wanted to scream, to tear the night apart with the truth. But all she could do was lie there, broken and wet, clinging to life. After what felt like hours, faint voices reached her ears. Flashlights cut across the darkness. Local fishermen, drawn by the cries of seabirds, spotted her crumpled form on the rocks. Their shouts were urgent, their hands rough but kind as they carried her into their boat. "Hold on, lady. You're safe now," one of them murmured as she slipped in and out of consciousness. But Maya knew she wasn't safe. Not yet. Because the man who had sworn to protect her had just tried to kill her. And unless she found a way to outsmart him, he would try again. As the boat sped toward the lights of the nearest town, Maya clenched her fists weakly against her soaked dress. Her body was broken, but her spirit hardened with each passing second. She wasn't going to let Daniel win. Not after this. Maya woke slowly, her head heavy as though it contained 100 pounds of lead. The first thing she noticed was the smell, antiseptic, sharp and bitter, lingering in the air like a warning. Her eyelids were swollen, and when she opened them fully, she realized she was in a hospital bed, tangled in crisp white sheets. Machines beeped rhythmically beside her, and the soft hum of air conditioning filled the room. Her body ached from every angle, ribs bruised, a wrist wrapped in a cast, cuts along her arms and legs stinging sharply with each movement. It would have been unbearable, except for the single cold truth that consumed her thoughts. Daniel had tried to kill her. The first time she saw him after waking, he was seated in a chair near the window, looking like the perfect grieving husband. His eyes were wide with fake concern, his hands trembling as he clutched a cup of coffee. "Maya," he whispered as soon as he noticed she was awake, voice low and controlled. "Oh, thank God. I didn't know if you'd make it." She stared at him, pain and fury twisting inside her. His voice was smooth, comforting, but she knew better now. The smile she had once loved was gone, replaced by something cold, calculated, and dangerous. She let herself cough and splutter, leaning on the nurse to get some water, giving him just enough confusion and weakness to believe in her accident. The truth burned inside her like molten fire. Every time he spoke, every time he touched her hand, she felt the betrayal sharpen. Daniel hadn't been distracted by work or stress. He hadn't made a mistake. He had tried to end her life. And now he sat there, playing the victim, while she lay trapped in a hospital bed, unable to confront him directly. Hours later, Maya made her first move. A quiet phone call from the hospital room, whispered under the hum of the ventilator. "Tasha?" she breathed into the receiver. The familiar voice answered almost immediately. "Maya? Is that you? I heard. Are you okay?" Tears prickled her eyes, but she swallowed them back. She couldn't afford to show weakness. "I survived," she said softly, letting the words tremble only slightly. "But it's complicated. I need your help. Within 24 hours, Tasha Monroe arrived at the hospital, disguised as a visiting nurse from another department. She was sharp-eyed, tall, and carried herself with the kind of confidence that demanded attention. The two women met quietly in Maya's room, behind drawn curtains, the bustling sounds of the hospital fading into background noise. "I've been digging since you called," Tasha said, sliding a folder across the bed to Maya. "You're not going to like what I found." Maya opened it with trembling hands. Photos, receipts, and documents spilled out like a flood of betrayal. There was Daniel, smiling with another woman, Claire, his secretary, in restaurants, hotel lobbies, even moments that should have been private in their own home. There were credit card statements she hadn't seen, showing expensive dinners and gifts she had never received. And then there was the insurance policy. $2 million. 6 months old. Signed with careful precision, with payments drawn from an account Maya had never known existed. Her stomach dropped. Her chest ached not just from her injuries but from the weight of the revelation. The man she had loved, the man she had trusted, had built a life outside of her. A life filled with deception, theft, and betrayal. "He's been careful," Tasha continued, her voice low. "You're the last to know. But there's more. He's been embezzling money from Hartwell Insurance. Small amounts, yes, but consistently. Enough to fund his little side life with Claire without raising suspicion. Too smart. Calculated. Dangerous." Maya's fists clenched against the sheets, her nails digging into her palms. Her heart raced with a mix of rage, sorrow, and disbelief. How could she have been so blind? How could the man she shared a life with, the man whose hands she had once trusted, have done this? For a long moment, she sat in silence, letting the full force of it hit her. Tears threatened, but she held them back. She couldn't cry. Not yet. Not when she needed her mind clear. Tasha leaned in, her expression sharp and resolute. "Maya, we have one shot at this. One chance to turn the tables. You can't go back in there as yourself. You have to disappear, and then you make him pay. But it has to be perfect. No mistakes. No leaving traces." Maya's mind spun. Disappear? She was injured, vulnerable, and trapped in a hospital. But the thought ignited something inside her, a fire she hadn't realized she still carried. She could do this. She had to. "I want him to think I'm gone," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "Completely gone. Let him collect the insurance, let him celebrate, and then She swallowed hard. "I'll destroy him." Tasha nodded. "Good. We start small. We make it believable. First, we stage your death, complications from your injuries, the kind of thing no one would suspect foul play. You'll be pronounced dead. Closed casket. Daniel will believe it. And then we build the rest of your new life. A new name, a new identity, resources to hit him where it hurts most. But first, we have to make him think he's won." Maya exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing just slightly. For the first time since the yacht, she felt control returning. She could still fight. She could still survive. And more than that, she could still win. The following days were a blur of whispered planning. Tasha worked quietly in the background, calling in favors, arranging contacts within the hospital and beyond. Maya maintained the act of confusion and fragility, letting Daniel hover at her bedside, speaking softly, fearing that she would collapse at any moment. She studied him, noting the subtle way he checked his phone, the careful glances toward the folder of insurance papers he kept hidden in his jacket. She realized that Daniel was not reckless. He was meticulous. Every detail of his plan had been carefully orchestrated, from the yacht accident, to the insurance policy to the affair with Claire. The thought should have terrified her, but instead it fueled her determination. One night, lying in the quiet darkness of her hospital room, Maya thought back to the moment she had fallen into the ocean. The cold, the shock, the betrayal, it all came rushing back. And she understood, with crystal clarity, that she was no longer the same woman who had trusted him blindly. That woman had died the night he pushed her overboard. What remained was stronger, sharper, and filled with purpose. "I'll be ready," she whispered to herself. I'll be ready to see him pay. Tasha's voice broke into her thoughts over the phone, calm but firm. Tonight, we make sure everyone believes it's over. Tomorrow, you'll vanish. And from that moment on, Daniel Hale will never see it coming. Maya closed her eyes, letting the words sink in. Fear still lingered, a shadow in the corner of her mind, but it was now a tool rather than a threat. She would use it. She would channel it. And Daniel would learn that the woman he had tried to kill could rise from the depths stronger than he ever imagined. As she drifted into a fitful sleep, her mind raced with the details of their plan, every step etched carefully. The staged death, the closed casket, the disappearance, the reinvention. And beneath it all, a single burning certainty. Revenge would come, precise and inevitable. Nothing would stop her. The morning air in the hospital was cold and sterile, but Maya felt a heat burning inside her, a mixture of adrenaline and determination that made her body feel alive despite the injuries she still carried. Today would mark the end of Maya Brooks, the woman who had once trusted Daniel Hale with her heart and her life. And from the ashes of that betrayal, Lila Grant would emerge. Tasha arrived before dawn, her presence quiet but commanding. She had coordinated every detail, from the fake death certificate to the closed casket funeral that Daniel would never question. It has to be perfect, Tasha reminded her, her eyes sharp as she handed Maya a folder with documents. One slip-up, one loose thread, and he'll know something's wrong. You can't afford that. Maya nodded, swallowing her fear. The hospital staff, Tasha had explained, were briefed and paid off through trusted contacts. Every signature, every medical note, had been falsified to make it appear that Maya had succumbed to complications from her injuries. Internal bleeding, shock, organ trauma, the kind of thing no one would suspect foul play in. As Tasha helped her into the wheelchair that would take her to a temporary recovery suite, Maya glanced at her reflection in the glass. Her once familiar face was pale and drawn, lips cracked from dehydration, eyes ringed with dark circles. The injuries from the yacht accident had left scars, small, but permanent reminders of Daniel's betrayal. And yet, in that same reflection she saw something new, a glimmer of steel, a spark that refused to be extinguished. The hours that followed were surreal. Maya lay in her hospital bed, monitoring every detail through a hidden camera feed that Tasha had installed. Doctors came and went, offering condolences, and Daniel appeared in the room several times, his face etched with fake worry, voice trembling with contrived grief. Each time he leaned over her bed, Maya felt a flicker of rage. She allowed a small cough here, a weak smile there, ensuring he believed her frailty. Every gesture, every blink, was calculated. Finally, the day came. The funeral. Maya watched from a small distance, hidden behind a cluster of trees on the cemetery grounds. She had requested to stay unseen. No one could know she was alive. The closed casket sat at the center, a symbol of the life Daniel believed he had destroyed. Daniel appeared first, standing stiffly in a perfectly tailored black suit. His eyes were red, but Maya could see the cracks in his act. There was impatience beneath the sorrow, a barely concealed frustration that she wasn't lying still where he could see. And behind him, Claire, his secretary, lingered. Her blonde hair shone in the sunlight, a stark contrast to the dark fabric of her dress. She whispered something in Daniel's ear, and he nodded, an almost imperceptible smirk flickering across his face. Maya's chest tightened as she watched them. They believed they had one. They were already planning a future together, counting her absence as an opportunity. Every word, every movement, was proof of how little they respected the life they thought they had ended. Tasha, crouched beside her in a black coat, whispered softly, "Remember, you're watching. No impulsive moves. Let him feel safe. He has no idea what's coming." Maya nodded, her throat tight, but her mind clear. She wasn't crying. She wasn't screaming. She was calculating. Every betrayal, every lie, every stolen moment, it would all be repaid. Once the funeral ended, Maya retreated to a safe house Tasha had prepared. The transformation began immediately. Hair dyed a deep chestnut brown, cut into a sleek bob. Eyes subtly shaded to soften her gaze. Clothing carefully selected to project sophistication and confidence. Identification, bank accounts, a clean backstory. Lila Grant was born, a woman with no ties to Maya Brooks, a woman with the resources and freedom to execute a plan that had been simmering for months. The first weeks as Lila were painstaking. She studied Daniel's company, Hartwell Insurance, meticulously. Reports, client lists, financial records. Every detail was gathered, analyzed, and logged. She started sending anonymous tips about embezzlement and unethical practices to regulatory agencies. Small leaks, barely noticeable, designed to create unease and suspicion. And it worked. Within days, Daniel began to sense that something was off. An audit had been flagged, a minor discrepancy in one of the financial reports had grown into a conversation with upper management. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from colleagues and partners, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find the source of the disturbance. Meanwhile, Lila watched from the shadows. Every time Daniel glanced over his shoulder, every time he rubbed his temples in frustration, she felt a quiet satisfaction. He thought he had removed her from the equation entirely. He thought he was untouchable. But she wasn't content with small disruptions. Lila started planting evidence, financial irregularities, forged documents that suggested Claire was complicit in the embezzlement. Emails carefully crafted to make Daniel doubt the loyalty of his closest associates. Phone calls routed through anonymous lines to his clients, sowing confusion. The net was tightening, and Daniel couldn't see it coming. The most thrilling moment came one night when Lila observed Daniel at a company gala, hosted in a grand downtown hotel. He was smiling, charming as ever, shaking hands with board members, whispering assurances to Claire. Yet, beneath the practiced charm, there was tension. He caught himself glancing at his phone repeatedly, checking messages that weren't there, responding to inquiries that seemed mundane but carried the weight of suspicion. It was a delicate dance, and Lila was leading. She felt the thrill of it in her veins, a mixture of vindication and empowerment. Every move Daniel made to secure his future, every strategy he employed to maintain control, she had anticipated. Every trap she laid was a silent arrow aimed at the man who had tried to end her life. Despite the exhilaration, there were moments of quiet reflection. Alone in her apartment, she allowed herself a few minutes to mourn the life she had lost. The love she had once felt for Daniel, the trust that had been shattered, the simple, ordinary happiness of being Maya Brooks, those were gone. But from that loss came a new clarity, a renewed purpose. She was no longer a victim. She was a force, precise and unstoppable. Weeks passed, and Daniel's tension grew. Hartwell Insurance's board began questioning him. Claire's confidence wavered. And yet, neither of them suspected Lila's existence. They were pawns in a game orchestrated by a woman they believed dead, a woman who had risen from the sea with nothing but her will and her fury. At night, Lila often thought back to the ocean, to the moment she had plunged into darkness, certain she would die. That fear had been real. That terror had been suffocating. And yet she had survived. Not by luck, but by her own determination, by refusing to surrender. And now she had the power to turn that survival into justice, into revenge. The transformation was complete. Maya Brooks, the woman who had loved and trusted too much, no longer existed. Lila Grant, the woman who commanded fear and respect, who moved with purpose and strategy, had taken her place. And Daniel Hale, no matter how carefully he maneuvered, would soon discover that the consequences of his betrayal were only beginning. Lila Grant's life had become a calculated dance of shadows and whispers. Every morning, she woke with one goal, to dismantle Daniel Hale's carefully constructed world. Months had passed since her staged death, and the man who had once smiled while plotting her murder had no idea that she lived. Every move he made, every handshake, every confident smile, Lila had anticipated, and now she would turn it against him. Her first step was exposure. Daniel's embezzlement had been small enough to avoid notice initially, but with Lila's meticulous planning, the pieces began to fall into place. Anonymous tips reached the auditors, irregularities in Hartwell Insurance's finances became more pronounced, and whispers circulated among board members. Lila fed each leak carefully, ensuring that her identity remained hidden while the pressure on Daniel mounted. Daniel tried to maintain his composure, but cracks were forming. Meetings grew tense. Colleagues exchanged furtive glances behind his back. Clients began requesting audits and clarifications. And every time he picked up his phone, there was another message, another unsigned report questioning his integrity. The next step was Claire. The secretary, once his ally and lover, had grown overconfident. Lila knew that exploiting that overconfidence would be crucial. She planted evidence suggesting Claire had been complicit in the embezzlement, emails, altered financial documents, and photographs showing her in seemingly incriminating situations. Within days, Claire's composure cracked. She confronted Daniel in his office, anger and fear warring in her eyes. "What is happening, Daniel? People are talking. There are documents, things that make me look guilty," she demanded, her voice trembling. Daniel's jaw tightened, and for the first time, Lila watched him falter. He tried to reassure her, to control the narrative, but the threads of his empire were unraveling faster than he could mend them. Claire eventually withdrew, leaving him exposed, alone, and increasingly desperate. Lila watched it all unfold from a high-rise apartment across the city, sipping her coffee in the early morning light. She had changed herself entirely, not just her appearance, but her mindset. Every step of this revenge was deliberate. Every move calculated. And the satisfaction of watching Daniel's confident world collapse was intoxicating. The media became her next tool. Lila anonymously tipped investigative journalists about Hartwell Insurance's internal troubles, feeding them just enough information to spark curiosity without revealing her involvement. Within weeks, articles began appearing online and in print, detailing minor scandals, questionable transactions, and executive mismanagement. Daniel found himself defending against public scrutiny he could not escape, his name tied to allegations of fraud and deception. One evening, as he stared at the glowing screen of his laptop in his sleek downtown apartment, Daniel finally understood the scope of his predicament. Emails from journalists, messages from clients, and internal memos he hadn't authorized piled up in his inbox. Panic surged through him, cold and relentless. He called Claire, but she didn't answer. His confidants avoided him. Every corner of his world, built on secrecy and manipulation, now threatened to crumble. It was time for the final move. Lila orchestrated it meticulously, ensuring that when she revealed herself, Daniel would have no escape. She arranged for a public meeting at a court hearing regarding Hartwell Insurance's legal troubles, knowing he would be present. But instead of appearing herself, she sent a video message, a calm, confident Lila Grant addressing Daniel directly, her face framed by the elegance she had cultivated since her rebirth. "Daniel Hale." Her voice echoed in the courtroom, clear and unflinching. "You thought you could remove me, that you could take my life and everything I had. You were wrong. Every step you took to betray me, to cheat me, to attempt my death, I watched, I survived, and I planned. And now, the world will know the truth." The video displayed carefully documented evidence, financial records, photos of Daniel with Claire, and proof of the insurance policy he had hoped to claim. Every detail was undeniable. Gasps filled the courtroom as murmurs turned to outright shock. Daniel's face drained of color, the confident mask he wore for so long crumbling under the weight of exposure. Claire's absence from the courtroom was telling. Lila had anticipated this. The betrayal had fractured Daniel's alliances, leaving him isolated in the most public, humiliating way possible. Board members, journalists, and legal teams all turned to him with suspicion, doubt, and the beginnings of contempt. For Daniel, the world became a whirlwind of chaos. Investigators arrived to question him about embezzlement and insurance fraud. Clients withdrew funds. Colleagues began distancing themselves. His carefully controlled life had evaporated overnight, replaced by the consequences of every lie, every betrayal, and every malicious act he had ever committed. Lila watched from a distance, allowing herself a small smile. Justice was no longer abstract. It was tangible, real, and inevitable. She didn't need to strike him with physical vengeance. She was dismantling him systematically, strategically, until there was nothing left. Weeks passed, and the legal investigations intensified. Daniel attempted to regain control, but it was futile. Emails, phone records, and anonymous tips traced back to his fraudulent activities, and each revelation compounded the pressure. Media coverage painted him as the villain he truly was, a man consumed by greed and betrayal. And somewhere, in the background of every story, Lila's presence lingered, invisible, omnipresent, and unrelenting. Finally, there came the day of direct confrontation. Lila had arranged a private meeting in Daniel's office, under the guise of an anonymous consultancy to review legal strategy. When he entered the room, expecting to meet an expert, the lights dimmed and a familiar silhouette appeared on the large screen at the far end of the room. "Maya?" Daniel whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm no longer Maya Brooks," she replied, her tone calm and cold. "I'm Lila Grant. The woman you tried to kill, the woman you thought was gone, has been watching, waiting, and planning. And now, Daniel, you will face the consequences of your actions." Daniel stumbled backward, disbelief and fear twisting his features. This can't be real." "It's very real," Lila said, stepping into the light, her presence commanding, her eyes cold and unwavering. "You gambled with my life, with my trust, and now the world is watching. Claire is gone. Your company is crumbling. Investigators are closing in. And the insurance money you tried to claim? It will vanish, along with everything else you thought you owned." For the first time, Daniel realized the depth of his failure. The man who had once controlled, manipulated, and deceived with effortless charm now had nothing. Lila had dismantled him without firing a shot, without revealing herself until the perfect moment. And in that moment, he understood that some betrayals carried consequences far beyond what he could imagine. Weeks later, Daniel Hale faced formal charges: embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Claire distanced herself entirely, abandoning him as his empire collapsed. And as the courtroom doors closed behind him, Lila Grant stood free, not just from Daniel, but from the life that had sought to destroy her. In her private apartment, overlooking the city skyline, Lila finally allowed herself to exhale. The revenge had been precise, controlled, and devastatingly effective. She no longer feared the past, nor the man who had tried to take her life. She was alive, transformed, and unstoppable. She reflected on the journey from betrayal to survival, from victim to architect of justice. The ocean, the yacht, the darkness, they had forged her into someone stronger, someone who would never again allow another to define her worth or threaten her existence. And as the city lights shimmered in the distance, Lila Grant, formerly Maya Brooks, embraced her new life. A life defined not by fear or deceit, but by power, resilience, and the knowledge that she had reclaimed everything the world had tried to take from her. Some falls, she realized, didn't kill you. Some betrayals didn't destroy you. They created something fiercer, sharper, and unbreakable. And from those depths, Lila had risen.